grandpapa, he told me when I was just a little tiny boy, just a little tiny guy. My grandpapa, he says, Ribitch, come here. And he sit me down on his knee and he said, you know, when you're just a little tiny guy, you have something that's inside you. Lives right there in the middle of your head. And it's called your imagination. He says, sometimes, you know, when people get older, they become adults. They become mature, yes, or so they think. And they take the imagination out, they put it in a paper bag, they put it under the bed, and they never look at it again. He says, now you gotta promise me one thing, that you never take your imagination out and put it in a bag and put it under the bed. And I never did. I still keep it right here. Now I can tell by the look in some of you people's eyes that you still keep yours right there too. Yes. Now it is said, and with much authority, that I am a direct descendant of the great Scheherazade, who is the greatest storyteller there ever was. But I am a bigger liar than she. Now, she told a story of one Sinbad the sailor. She told the story of Sinbad, who was handsome and brave and bold, did she not? Well, she lied. After all, it was her neck that was on the line, so she could lie a bit. Now, I do know the true story of the last voyage of Sinbad the sailor. Now, Sinbad the sailor was a very simple man. He was simple in his dress. He was simple in his manners. But most of all, Sinbad the sailor was simple in the mind. You see, Sinbad the sailor was crazy as a loon, for he would sit all of the day long out in the rain, calling out to people who would pass by, would you play with me? Would you play with me? Would you play with me? Would you? But no one would play with Sinbad. Heavens no. They would walk wide around Sinbad. They wanted nothing to do with this crazy Sinbad fellow. And then it happened that one day two adventurers were passing through Persia and they heard the name of Sinbad whispered upon the lips of the people. Could this be he, they asked themselves, Sinbad the sailor that we've read so much about? Brave Sinbad, bold and courageous. Could this be he, the handsome Sinbad? Let us find Sinbad and take him on an adventure with us that we may all make our fortunes. And they searched throughout Persia for Sinbad, and they found Sinbad sitting in the rain as he always did. For at that time it did rain in Persia. Are you Sinbad, they asked. Sinbad the sailor, are you he? Yes, I'm Sinbad, replied Sinbad. I'm he. The brave Sinbad, the bold and courageous Sinbad, and frankly ugly Sinbad. You're Sinbad? Yes, I'm Sinbad. Well, we would like to take you on an adventure with us, they said to Sinbad. Sinbad shook his head and said, you will play with me? Yes, you will play. One of the adventurers tried to clean his ears and said, did Sinbad, the brave Sinbad, the bold Sinbad, courageous, the frankly ugly Sinbad, did he say play? Nay, said his partner. He said not play. He said pay. After all, he's an adventurer. He's brave. He's bold. He's courageous. And frankly, he's ugly as hell. Of course, Sinbad, there will be pay. There'll be more gold than your donkey could carry. There'll be jewels and diamonds beyond your belief. Yes, Sinbad the sailor, there will be pay. And they picked Sinbad up and they set him on a great and mighty ship. Now, what I'm about to say, you must not utter a word to a soul. This must be our secret. Sinbad was not a sailor at all. You see, he got seasick just taking a bath. That's why he sat in the rain. And he sailed north, and he sailed west, and he sailed south, and he sailed east. And the crew of the ship, they became, how you say the word, paranoid. They heard about the voyages of Sinbad the sailor. and how the crews of Sinbad's voyages would be washed away to sea or swallowed up by one-eyed giants, and all the horrible fates that happened to the crews of Sinbad's voyages. So they would try and catch Sinbad the sailor to throw him overboard. But every time that they would chase after Sinbad the sailor, Sinbad would run away, and they never could catch him because he thought they wanted to play tag, and that was his favorite game. One day they came to a mysterious island, Lemuria that some call it, and they anchored the ship offshore. And the two adventurers spoke to Sinbad, "Sinbad, you go ashore and we'll wait here," because they had heard that on this island there was a bottle with a genie in it. And they had all heard the stories of how genies, when they were released from the bottle, were quite irritable. In fact, they were so irritable that oftentimes they slit the throat of those who freed them. So they sent Sinbad ashore, thinking that they would come later after the genie had left, and they would collect the gold and the jewels and collect all the treasure for themselves. Well, Sinbad found the city. He found all of the gold, and he found all of the jewels. But most of all, Sinbad found the bottle. He held the bottle up and thought to himself, "Oh, I like this. This is nice." And he dusted it off. And out of the bottle rose a genie high into the air, who reached down and scooped Sinbad up in his hand and said, "Sinbad, you have released me from this bottle, and I will grant you 3 wishes, but you best choose them well." Sinbad, he thought about this for a while. He looked up into the sky. He says, "I wish it would stop raining." And it stopped raining, and it has never rained since in Persia. And then he looked again into the sky and said, "I wish that the sun would come out." And the sun came out, and it has been shining down ever since in Persia. And for the last wish, Sinbad thought very hard about this. And he looked back at the ship, and he looked up at the genie, and he gave the genie a wink. And he said, "I wish that everyone on board that ship was as crazy as me, so I'd have someone to play with." And just like that, everyone on board the ship went crazy. And now Sinbad has plenty of people to play with. And if you're ever in Persia and you wonder why it does not rain and why there is so much sand and why there is no green, find Sinbad the sailor and ask him, for he is the only one who knows. Now, back in the 30s, the popular magazines of the day were the pulp magazines. And one of the most popular of the pulp magazines was a magazine called Weird Tales. And in Weird Tales, I think it was about 1934, a young author printed his first story. He was 16 years old. He later became known for a story that a movie was made out of called Psycho. This writer was Robert Bloch. And this story here is Robert Bloch's first published story called The Black Lotus. This tale is older than time. That this tale comes from a time long before man drug himself out of the dust of his discontent. That this tale comes from a time when the griffin still stuck out its lion's breast and ducked low its eagle's head. Indeed, that this tale is very old and comes from a land called Taraz. Now, in Taraz, there was a ruler of the land by the name of Janir, who was known as Janir the Dreamer. For Janir loved to revel in dream, so much that he would revel in dream that he noticed not that the sands of his land were stained red with the blood of his people, and that smoke of revolution rose off the land. So much did he revel in dream that he noticed not that his noblemen in his courtyard committed debaucheries that this storyteller would be ashamed to relate. But Janir the dreamer grew bored with the dreams of normal man, that of sleep, that he sent his servants far to the east to Cathay to bring him hashish and opium that he may revel further in dream. But he grew bored with this also. Now, Janir the dreamer was a scholarly man, for he did read the ancient tombs like the Necronomicon by the Mad Abdul al-Harazad and the Book of Ebon. For it is in the Book of Ebon that Janir the dreamer read of a flower called the Black Lotus. It said that the Black Lotus could rip from the mind of man his very sanity and throw it to the ground and leave him wreathing in the dust with his tongue waving in the air and his eyes rolled back in madness. But that this dream would be the dream that dreamers wish to dream. So Janir the dreamer desired this dream and sent 5 of his most trusted servants far to the east into the mountains of Cathay to bring forth this succulent bud, that only one returned, and that one laid before his king a gilded box that was covered in runes, and he too fled the land and was never seen again. Janir opened the box, and the fumes beckoned to Janir. Come, Janir, the dreamer, come to me to dream that dream, to dream that dream that will seep you in darkness. And Janir pulled forth a petal, put it in his pestle, and ground it fine, and loaded his hookah full, and partook of that noxious fume, spun himself about in exquisite pain. That agony that ripped from his head his very sanity, and he fell to the floor, to the dust, and wreathed there with his tongue waving in the air. And Janir the dreamer dreamed a dream. He dreamed that he lay on a gilded bed that was draped in ruby red. About his head was adorned with pearls, and at his feet lay the cups of life, that his fingers bloated, his legs and arms swollen in death's spasm, that his tongue explode, his eyes protrude, that the stench of death hung around his face. And Janir the dreamer awoke. He opened the Book of Ebon, and there he read, the dream of the first should foretell the future. Nay, cried Janir the dreamer, that I should ever partake of this noxious fume again. Nay, not I, not Janir the dreamer. Never again, never. But weak was the will of Janir the dreamer, and strong was the fume that beckoned. Come, Janir, come close one more time to me. Come, Janir. And Janir pulled forth another petal and ground it fine, stuffed his hookah full, and partook of that noxious fume again, and again spun himself about in that exquisite agony, and again fell to the dust and wreathed in agony, and again his mind ripped free of its sanity, and again Janir dreamed a dream. Janir dreamed that he stepped to the edge of his balcony and gazed across his lands and saw the sands of his lands stained red with the blood of his people, and that the horizon grew with smoke and flame of revolution. And Janir the dreamer dreamed that he peered down into his courtyard, and there lay his noblemen with their throats slit by their own hands. And then Janir the dreamer dreamed that he stepped to the precipice of his balcony and threw himself to his death. And then Janir the dreamer awoke. He opened the book of Abon, and there it read, "The dream of the second should tell you what might have been." "Nay," cried Janir the dreamer, "that I should ever dream again. That I, Janir the dreamer, would give up dreaming altogether and spend the rest of my days in wakefulness. Nay, I should never partake of this noxious fume. Never." But as I said, weak was the will of Janir the dreamer, and strong was the fume that beckoned. "Come, Janir, come to me, your sweet lover. Come, Janir, close to me." And Janir peeled forth another petal and ground it fine, and stuffed his hookah full and partook of that noxious fume, and again spun himself about in that agony, and again fell to the floor, wreathing in the dust with his tongue waving in the air, and his eyes rolled back. And Janir the dreamer dreamed a dream. He dreamed that he sailed on a ship of ice on a sea of glass, and rising out of the horizon the black lotus with its petals outstretched like hungry arms, beckoning, "Come, Janir, to me. Come close to me, Janir." And the petal reached out as Janir approached himself close, and stroked the side of his cheek with tenderness, and wrapped itself about his throat and began to squeeze until the breath fell from his chest like a cold stone. And Janir dreamed that he pulled his dagger forth and cut loose that noxious fume. And then Janir the dreamer awoke, but for a moment, to discover that he wore a necklace of ruby red that was his own blood. For Janir the dreamer had slit his throat in his reverie of dream. And with that last breath, and the wind blowing through the window and ruffling the pages of Abon, it fell on the page that read, "The dream of the third should bring you reality." Thank you. Another writer of the day whom Robert Bloch communicated with, along with August Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith and a whole variety of people, was the writer H.P. Lovecraft. And one of his early stories, which I shall tell now, is called "The Cats of Ulthar." "There is a law in Ulthar that no one should harm a cat, not one single hair upon one single cat. Now that this law has been in effect for a long, long time, and on my last visit to Ulthar, I made inquiries as to the origin of this law, and it is this tale that I was told. That long ago, before this law came to be, there was an old couple who lived down the road. That they hated cats with such a passion that whatever cat would cross their path, whatever cat would come upon their property, they would take this cat and put it to death in the most exquisite and painful of manners. That the howls of agony from those cats could be heard throughout the city of Ulthar. The people of Ulthar would shiver in the night at the thought of that old couple, because at that time, superstition was very high in Ulthar. And they thought that this couple were practicing rites of magic such as they had fear of. So they wanted nothing to do with this old couple down the road, that they would stay away and say nothing about the cats being murdered in the night. Now it happened that the roamers came through, the gypsies, and they camped on the outskirts of Othar. And there was a child there amongst the gypsies by the name of Minos. Now Minos, his family was gone, for they died in the great plagues. And all that Minos had was a small kitten that he would talk to, that would keep him company. He would play with this kitten and speak to this kitten and tell his most inner secrets too. And one day, Minos fell asleep beneath a tree, and when he awoke, this cat was gone. So he cried out for his kitten all through the town, and finally someone came to him and said, "If your cat is gone, if your cat is missing, then it is the old couple that live down the road, for they hate cats. They hate cats with such a passion that they put them to the most exquisite of agonies." And Minos went off into the woods wailing and crying until he came to a clearing, and there he stopped and he raised his arms into the air and he began to chant and he began to sing until the clouds gathered themselves together and started to resemble demons of the most horrible sort. And one by one the cats began to leave their homes, one by one. The gray, the tabby, the black, the white, the calico, they all left their hearths and disappeared in the night. Now, it happened that the gypsies left town on that night. And many of the townspeople blamed the gypsies for stealing their cats. They thought, it is like the gypsies. They steal everything, that they would come and steal our cats in revenge for the death of Minos' cat. And then a week later, the cats returned, one by one. The gray and the tabby, the black and the white and the calico. And they were all fat and plump, and they were all purring and smiling, and they laid beside the hearths and ate not for many days. It was many weeks, and no sound was heard from the old couple's home, that the Burgermeister gathered around him many of the bravest men within Othar, and they approached the house, and since it was the Burgermeister's authority, he broke the door down and they all entered, and there on the floor lay the bones of two people, licked clean as if by the rough tongues of cats. And from that day forward, there has been a law in Othar that no one should harm a single hair upon a single cat. And if you ever go to Othar, it would be best that you obey the law. Stan Bovan was a brave man. Now, why was Stan Bovan such a brave man? Stan Bovan had 100 children. Whew. Boy, you have to be real brave to have 100 children, you know? 100 children. These 100 children all the time hungry. Now, you know, this was at a time of inflation, and Stan Bovan was unemployed. So he couldn't afford to pay for all the food for 100 children. So he told his oldest son, he says, "Sonny," he says, "I'm going out into the world and I'm going to make my fortune so then I can pay for food for all you 100 children." And he packed himself a honey cake and off he set through the woods. Now, Stan Bovan traveled for several hours until he came to a clearing, and there in the clearing there sat a table. Stan Bovan thought that was mighty strange. There was a table there in the middle of the woods, but he sat himself down, he brought out his honey cake, and he cut it in two. He ate half of it and fell into a deep sleep. When Stan Bovan awoke, there buzzing all around the other half of the honey cake were hundreds and hundreds of flies. Bzzz. Stan Bovan picked up his club. He killed 100 flies with one stroke. Stan Bovan was so proud. Oh, goody, I killed 100 flies with one stroke. I'm so good. Oh, I'm so good. He dipped his finger in the honey cake and he wrote on top of the table, I killed 100 with one stroke. He fell back asleep. While Stan Bovan was asleep, a dragon came into the clearing and saw Stan Bovan lying there on the table asleep and thought to himself, goody, fast food. And he snuck up on Stan Bovan. This is how dragons sneak, you know. And he was about ready to take a bite out of Stan Bovan when he read on the table, just above Stan Bovan's head, I killed 100 with one stroke. And the dragon thought to himself, oh, this is the fiercest dragon killer because he killed 100 dragons with one stroke of his club. Oh, I'm getting out of here. And he started to back away. Stan Bovan at that time woke up, saw the dragon backing away, and he calls to the dragon, hey, wait a minute, where are you going? And the dragon says, I'm going home to lunch. I'm hungry. And Stan Bovan says, I'm hungry too. I go with you. Well, since he thought Stan Bovan was a famous dragon killer, well, he had to take him with him. So they got to the dragon's house, and there sat the dragon's mother knitting on dragon booties. And the dragon says, Mama, says, this is Stan Bovan. And Stan Bovan is hungry, and he's a famous dragon killer because he killed 100 dragons with one stroke of his club, and he's hungry and wants to eat. Dragon's mother, she says, Stan Bovan has to work for his meal. You send him up the hill and have him fetch the water. They took Stan Bovan up the hill, and the dragon handed Stan Bovan a huge, gigantic bag that was bigger than Stan Bovan himself. He said, Stan Bovan, you got to take water down to the house. Well, Stan Bovan, he goes, this is too much. The bag was heavier than he could carry empty, much less when it was full of water. So Stan Bovan got a stick and he started digging a hole that ran down the hill. And the dragon says, Stan Bovan, what are you doing? And Stan Bovan replied, why, it's too much trouble. You come up the hill, you get the water, you take it down to the house. You come up the hill, you get the water, you take it down to the house. You come up the hill, you get the water, you take it down to the house. I get tired just thinking of it. So what I'm doing, I'm digging a trench. It'll run all the way down the hill. The water will run down the trench and right into your living room. No, said the dragon, I don't want water in my living room. If I have water in my living room, I'll get my sneakers wet. I'll do it myself. So he took the bag, filled it with water, and carried it down to the house. The dragon's mother was a little irritated over this and said, Stan Bovan has to work for his meal. Send him out to the woods to fetch wood for the fire. So the dragon took Stan Bovan out and said, Stan Bovan, you have to carry 3 of those trees down to the house. Stan Bovan. So he peeled off some bark and he started weaving a rope. Dragon watched him weave the rope and said, Stan Bovan, what are you doing? Stan Bovan replied, it's too much trouble. You carry the wood down to the house, you come to the wood, you carry the wood down to the house, you come to the wood, you carry the wood down to the house. Whew, I get tired just thinking of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build a rope. I'll wrap the rope all around the entire woods. I'll take the woods down and I'll put it right in your living room. No, says the dragon, I don't want the woods in my living room. If I had the woods in my living room, I'll get lost. I won't be able to find my way to the kitchen. I'll starve to death. I'll never find my way to bed. And, it'll be horrible. No, I'll do it myself. So he carried the wood down. The dragon's mother was very irritated about this. And she called her son over when Stan Bovan was just on the other side of the room and said, tonight, when Stan Bovan lays down to go to bed and he's asleep, you sneak up on Stan Bovan and you hit him with your club and you kill him. Be done with him. So the dragon said, okay. Well, Stan Bovan overheard this. So that night, when he was getting ready for bed, he put a log in his bed and he covered it up with a blanket so it looked like he was lying in bed. And then he hid underneath the bed. The dragon came in, got his club out, boom, thumped what he thought was Stan Bovan on the head and went back and says, "Mama, it's done. He's all dead." Stan Bovan came into the room and he's rubbing his head and he says, "You gotta do something about it. You should put some screens on your windows or something, because you got the biggest mosquitoes I ever saw in my whole life." Oh, thought the dragon. Oh, no, thought the dragon's mother. So the dragon's mother told her son, "You offer Stan Bovan 1 bag of gold to go away and never come back." So the dragon says, "Stan Bovan, I can give you 1 bag of gold if you go away and never come back." Stan Bovan says, "No, I like it here. I like it so much, I'm going to stay forever." Oh, no, thought the dragon. Oh, no, thought the dragon's mother. And she called her son over and she says, "You offer Stan Bovan 2 bags of gold to go away and never come back again." Stan Bovan said, "The dragon, I'll give you 2 bags of gold if you go away and never come back again." Stan Bovan says, "No, I like it here. I'm going to stay forever. In fact, I like it so much, I'm going to adopt you as my mama and papa." Oh, no, thought the dragon, and oh, no, thought the dragon's mother. "You offer Stan Bovan," said the dragon's mother, "you offer him 7 bags of gold, because that's all the gold we have, to go away and never return." So dragon says, "Stan Bovan, I'll give you 7 bags of gold if you go away and never come back again. That's all the gold we have, and I'll give it to you. You just go away. Just move on." Stan Bovan, he thought about this, and he nodded his head and says, "Oh, this sounds good. I like the idea, but, I'm tired. I've been working hard all day, thinking about carrying water and thinking about carrying wood and all this, slapping mosquitoes. Oh, I'm tired. If you give me a ride home on your back with all the gold, I'll agree." So dragon, he put Stan Bovan on his back, he put the gold on his back, and he flew into the air. And as they approached Stan Bovan's house, all 100 children come running out of the house, and they had knives and forks in their hands, and they all come running out of the house going, "Daddy's home, Daddy's home, Daddy, 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 food, 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 Daddy's home, Daddy's home, yes, food, food, food." And the dragon looked down there and saw those 100 children and thought to himself, "Oh, no, 100 little tiny Stan Bovans. 100 tiny Stan Bovans, and they're all hungry and they all want to eat me." And he dumped Stan Bovan on the ground. He dumped the gold on the ground and flew away and was never seen again. For my last story right now is a story that I wrote. To believe for a moment in something magical. To believe for just a short time in a story. To take the time to savor the fragrance that will whiff through the air on a cool breeze. To take the time to sit and to count the stars. Indeed, to take the time to count the stars. When I was a small boy, I was walking along the road, and I came to an old man who was sitting on a stone. The old man looked at me and he says, "You're late, boy. You should have been here a long time ago." I approached, kind of curious as to what he was talking about. And he says, "You almost lost it. Yeah, you almost lost it." And then he peered into the sky. He says, "I'm going to tell you something." He says, "You look up there, you see all those stars up there? Every star is a story." Yeah, it's true. Every one. And for every star that falls, that's a story that's lost. so don't lose them. And then he reached into his bag and he pulled out a rose. He handed it to me to smell, which I did, and he began to tell me this story. Long ago, there was a small girl who did not believe in magical things, who did not have the time for such things. But one day she was walking through the woods and she came to a field of flowers. And she stopped there amongst those flowers. She smelled them and she felt them. And she decided she was going to pick herself a bouquet of these flowers to take home with her. When suddenly she spied high on a hill one flower that sat all by itself. A giant rose. That rose up there, she said, that is the rose for me. That is the rose for my hair. Ah, that is the rose for me. And she began to climb, and she climbed and climbed and climbed till she got to the top of that hill. And she was about to pluck that rose when suddenly the rose cries out, don't you dare pick me. I'm not the rose for you. How can this be, she said. A rose that speaks to me? How can it be? And the rose replied, that I am the queen of all the flowers that grow. That I am the fragrance of spring. She put her hands on her hips and she says, I don't believe. I don't believe in fairy queens. I don't believe in magical things. I don't believe. Sighed the flower, that's too bad that you don't believe. But why is it so that you don't believe? And the flower replied, I don't have time, she said. The little girl said, I don't have time. I must hurry here, I must hurry there, I must be going, I must. I don't have time for silliness. I don't believe. Well, the flower sighed again and said, it is too bad that you don't have time for such magical things, but one more whiff of me before you leave. And proved herself to be. And from that day forward, she took just a bit of time for silliness and storytelling and such. It's nice to be down here. Ralph's Cafe. I'm dressed up in my Sunday suit. Looks nice, don't it? You know, I work in the dump. You wouldn't know it to look at me. I look pretty classy tonight. But I work down in the dump. I'm a dump supervisor. That's true. I drive the tractor and haul around the junk and the garbage. You ever go down to the dump? Look at all the junk down there. They throw away the darndest things, don't they? Down there at the dump. Why, you know they throw away styrofoam cups, mattresses, bed springs, corn cobs, all kinds of stuff they throw down there in the dump. They even throw puppy dogs down in the dump. That's so they don't have to bury them. You know, they just throw them out in the dump.
dump them out there. Would you ever think whatever happens to all that garbage down there in the dump? Well, I'm going to tell you. It lays on top of each other. All this garbage just lays right on top of each other, and then it starts to rot. And when it starts to rot, it starts to heat up. It gets harder and harder and harder, and then it breaks down, and it becomes just compost. Well, some of it does. Some of the garbage nowadays just stays as it is. Styrofoam cups. It'll stay as styrofoam cups forever. Yeah. You know, one time I was sitting down at the dump. Me and Pearlie was sitting down there, and we was drinking on the hooch. And Pearlie, he's telling a story like he always did. Now, Pearlie, we always call him Pearlie because he smiled and he had the nicest looking teeth you ever saw. Well, midway through his story, Pearlie had to go out and relieve himself. You know, who'd you do that to you? So Pearlie, he goes on out into the dark. Suddenly I hear Pearlie shouting out loud, and Pearlie comes running back, and his eyes are wide, and Pearlie's scared to death. And I says, Pearlie, what's the matter? What's wrong? Pearlie says, I saw it. It come out of the dump. It come out of the garbage. And it was the awfulest looking thing you ever saw. It rose up into the air 15 feet in the air, and it was the ugly thing. It had a bed spring spreading out of the side of its head like a big old ear. It had a corn cob on the other side and a styrofoam cup up here. You know, and all this garbage is sticking out on it, and right in the middle of its forehead was a puppy dog that just jiggled like this. I says, oh, Pearlie, it's the hooch. It's probably just a dog or a coon or something out there in the dump, you know, scrounging around. Well, Pearlie says, yeah, it must have been. And Pearlie picked up the hooch, drank another shot of hooch, and continued on with his story. Pearlie finished the story, laughed a little bit, decided he had to go relieve himself some more, so he headed out to the dump again. Pearlie come running back, and he's shaking, and his eyes are wide, and he's scared. He's just shaking all over. And Pearlie says, I saw it again. It's huge. It's just gigantic. And that big old bed spring, and the styrofoam cups, and the corn cobs, and that puppy dog just jiggling in the middle of its forehead. So Pearlie picked up his .38, and he goes on back out into the dump again. And I heard Pearlie shout, and he goes, tsh, tsh. I heard him shoot off 2 shots. Pearlie come running back. He says, I shot it. I shot at it twice, and the bullet just went clean right on through it. Didn't harm it none at all. And I says, oh, Pearlie, it's the hooch. But to make Pearlie feel better, I went and I got my big shotgun and I laid it across my lap. Now, we sat there by the fire for a few more minutes drinking on the hooch, and suddenly we heard a noise coming behind the dump shed. Suddenly, up popped Pearlie. He snuck himself around the side of the dump shed with his .38 in his hand. And I saw this great big old tentacle reach around and grab Pearlie up and throw it into its maw. It had the biggest looking mouth you ever saw, barbed wire, and it just boom, popped Pearlie right on down. I let both barrels of my shotgun go into that thing. And it just stood there and shook, and sure enough, it had the puppy dog right there in its forehead, and it ran off into the dark by the dump. Well, I jumped in the dump tractor, and I chased it down, and I got it down at the end of the dump up against the dump fence. And I was about ready to gun the engine and cut it in 2 when I looked at the thing, and I saw the puppy dog jiggling there in its forehead, and I always was partial to puppy dogs. It's true. Puppy dog just get me right there in the soft part of my heart, and I just couldn't do it. And suddenly Pearlie popped out of its cheek just like a hair, just popping right on out. And I always liked Pearlie, so I just couldn't do it. Couldn't kill it. So I backed off with the tractor, and it fell down on the ground and whimpered a little bit, and I patted it on the head. Well, I adopted it. Yeah, and I named it Otto. Now, Otto does not get fresh food very often. He has to scrounge around the dump and eat, garbage. He doesn't get fresh food very often. That is until you all come along. Yeah. Oh, don't get up. I got Pearlie's .38 in here. Otto, dinner's served. This next story comes from North Carolina, and it's called Dry Fry. Everybody knows Dry Fry. Now, old Dry Fry was a preacher. He preached up a storm. Now, Dry Fry, when Dry Fry would preach, it was the driest, most boring preaching you ever heard in your entire life. That's why the dry part of his name. Now, Dry Fry also loved fried chicken. Dry Fry loved fried chicken so much, that was why the fry part of his name, Dry Fry. Now, everybody knows Dry Fry. One day, Dry Fry, now let me tell you something about Dry Fry. Dry Fry, whenever he'd be riding around, he'd smell fried chicken through the air. He'd just stop his buggy right there, and he'd walk on up to the house and invite himself in. And that's what happened. One day, Dry Fry riding down the road with his little buggy, and he smelled that fried chicken in the air, and he stopped that buggy right there, and he goes up and he knocks on Mr. Willett's door. Mr. Willett opens up the door and says, "Why, it's old Dry Fry." Everybody knows Dry Fry. Says, "Well, come on in, Dry Fry, because we're sitting down. We're just about ready to have some fried chicken." And old Dry Fry, he already knew that, but he says, fried chicken, okay. And he goes and he sits down, and he waits very polite and very patient until the chicken is set right down there on the table and the top is taken off the platter. Dry Fry says a very short prayer, and God bless his meal, amen. And he dove right into that middle of that chicken. He started gobbling up that chicken. And suddenly, Dry Fry, his eyes got big, and he just went, and fell right down dead on the floor. He got a chicken wing caught right there in his throat and choked himself to death. Well, Mr. Willett looked down there on the ground and says, "Oh, no, Dry Fry, he's dead. He's deader than a doornail. Dry Fry, he's dead. And they're going to blame me for killing old Dry Fry. Oh, they'll send me to prison for the rest of my life, and I'll never get out. I got to do something with the body." So he picks up old Dry Fry. He loads Dry Fry in the back of his buggy, and he drives Dry Fry on down to his neighbor's house, Mr. Crockett. Now, he props Dry Fry right up there at the door. He knocked on the door, and he ran away. Well, Mr. Crockett, he comes out there, and he says, "Oh, it's Dry Fry." And he opens up the screen door, and Dry Fry goes, boom, falls right down on the ground, stiff as stiff could be. And he says, "Oh, no, I done killed Dry Fry. I just killed that Dry Fry, dead as a doornail, and they're going to think I killed Dry Fry, and they're going to send me to prison for the rest of my days. Oh, I can do something with the body." So he picks up Dry Fry. He loads Dry Fry in the back of his wagon, and he drives Dry Fry down the road, down to the Thornton's house. Now, he props Dry Fry up next to the barn where the chickens are, and he head off. Mr. Thornton, he comes out, and he sees somebody standing out there by the barn by his chickens. He says, "Oh, somebody trying to steal my chickens. Somebody out there. Sure as they be, they're trying to steal my chickens." So he goes in, he gets his shotgun, he takes a careful bead, and Dry Fry falls down on the ground. He runs out there. Mr. Thornton goes out there, and he says, "Why, that's old Dry Fry." Because everyone knows old Dry Fry. He says, "I done killed Dry Fry. Dry Fry just killed him dead as a doornail. He's dead. Oh, they're going to think I killed Dry Fry. They're going to send me to prison for the rest of my days. I got to do something with the body." So he picks up the body. He takes the body down by the river, and he sets the body up there, and he moves his arms around, makes it look like Dry Fry's down there by the river just a-praying. Down the road comes the Jones boy. He's such a rascal. He sees Dry Fry down there by the river. He says, "Why, that's old Dry Fry." Because everybody knows Dry Fry. He says, "I'm going to scare Dry Fry." And he picks up himself a little stone, and he chunks it at Dry Fry. It hits Dry Fry right upside the head, and Dry Fry goes boom, falls down on the ground. And Jones boy, he comes in and he goes, "Oh, no, I done killed Dry Fry. Dry Fry, he's dead as a doornail. Oh, no, they're going to know I killed Dry Fry. They're going to send me to prison for the rest of my days, and I'm just a little tiny boy. Oh, I got to do something with the body." He look around like this, and he pulled a big old bag out of his
Out of all the stuff that he had to carry around, boys carry around lots of stuff, you know, and he had his old gunny sack, and he starts shoving dry fry in there, right? Well, about that time, a couple bandits, they come riding up over the hill. They go, hey, look at that boy down there. He's stuffing something in that there bag. I bet it's a treasure. And he dumped that thing down the river, you know, and John boy, he takes off. Well, these two bandits, they come down, you know, and one bandit, he goes down there and he hauls up that bag, you know, and they open up the bag and they go, why, that's old dry fry. Everybody knows dry fry. Says, why, they're going to think we killed dry fry. They're going to think we killed dry fry, and they're going to send us to prison for the rest of our days. Now, we're going to have to do something with the body. So they loaded the body across their horse, and they drove it over to old Mr. Samuel's house. Now, Mr. Samuel's, he cured the best hams in all Carolina, let me tell you. He had him hanging up inside the smokehouse. Well, they took old dry fry and they hung him up in the smokehouse, you know, and they took off. Mr. Samuels comes out there. It was Sunday afternoon. He thought, well, I'm gonna have a nice ham today. And he goes in there and he opens up the door and he goes, that's old dry fry. Everybody knows old dry fry. He says, they're going to think I killed dry fry. They're going to think I killed dry fry and hung him up in the smokehouse to smoke dry fry to have for a Sunday dinner. They're going to think I'm a cannibal or something. Oh, they're going to send me to prison for the rest of my days. I got to do something with the body. So what he did, he took old dry fry. He strapped him onto a horse, tied him up real good. He gave that horse a good slap on the butt, and that horse goes taking off in the hills. Now, you know, to this very day, there'll be a nice full moon at night. The fog will be hanging down low. The light be shining down kind of eerie down through the trees. And they'll see a lone horseman come riding up through the hills. And everybody will look up there and they'll go, why, that's old dry fry. Because everybody knows dry fry. The last story I'm going to tell is a story I wrote. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's called The Box. Once they were wizards. There were sorcerers. Men of magic who could change you into a toad with a snap of their fingers or change you into a gust of a wind with a swing of their arms. Once there were wizards. Now, there was one such wizard who had an apprentice who displeased him so he shrunk him up very small, took this apprentice and put him inside of a metal box and sealed it up and wrote runes, warnings all around the outside, never to open this box. And he buried it under the ground where it sat for 4,000 years. That's a long time to be stuck in a box. One afternoon, there was an elderly gentleman. He was digging in his garden, and he came across the box. Why, that's the strangest thing I ever saw, he said, and he turned it over and over and over, and it has writing all over it, and he tried to read it. I don't understand a word of it. He took this box into his house, and he set it up on the shelf next to the volumes of Emily Dickinson and Mark Twain and other people he enjoyed reading. And he sat himself down in his easy chair to think about this. And pretty soon he became very tired from thinking so hard. They decided to go up and take a nap. Up the stairs he went and fell quite asleep. In the middle of his sleep, he was awoken by a terrible clatter, a horrible noise. So he came down the stairs and he could hear all this noise coming from his study. So he opened the door and there was a wind blowing. His mustache was flapping in the breeze. His hair was blowing in the wind. I wonder where all this wind's coming from, he said. He looked and the windows were closed, so it couldn't be coming from there. Then he noticed that all this commotion was coming from the box. So he walks over, he picks up the box, and as he started to pick up the box, it fell to the floor with a thump, and a little voice came out, "Oh, my head!" "Why, there's somebody in there," he said. "Who are you?" And a little voice says, "I've been stuck in this box for a long time." "How long?" said the elderly man. It says, 4,000 years. 4,000 years, and if you let me out of this box, I will grant you one wish. and stood back and says, "How long you been in there?" 4,000 years, replied the little voice in the box. Well, 4,000 years, that sounds like 5 wishes to me. Very well, said the little voice in the box. 5 wishes, I will give you 5 wishes. You mean to say I can have myself an automobile with great big tires that I need a stepladder to get into? Yes, said the little voice in the box. And you mean to say I can have a waterbed I can jump up and down on? Yes, said the little voice in the box. And I can have a color TV and I can watch anything I choose? Yes, said the little voice in the box. And I can have video games and be Captain Commando? Yes, said the voice in the box. He didn't even wait for his 5th wish. He ran all the way outdoors. He brought in all of his tools. He tried hammers. He tried saws. He tried the blowtorch, and nothing would open this box. He stood back, scratched his head. He sat down. Suddenly he had an idea. So he went back out to his shed, and he comes back with a snow shovel, and he scoops up the box. He carries it out to the garden in which he dug it up. He laid it down in the hole, and he kicked a little dirt in, tapped it down. And the little voice says, "What are you doing? Why are you putting me back in the ground?" And he replied thus, "Well, I thought about it a long time, and I don't need a big old automobile with big tires, small tires, lowered down to the ground, or whatever. Because you see, in this valley I live in, there are no roads. And if I had a car, I'd have to build roads. And once I built roads, then there'd be automobiles. They'd be buzzing here and buzzing there. They'd be honking their horns, and it'd get real smoggy. I couldn't breathe. No, I don't need an automobile. I don't need a waterbed to jump up and down on, because you see, I get seasick when I go out fishing. No, don't need a waterbed, and I don't need a color TV, because all there is on TV anymore is Laverne and Shirley, Beretta, Kojak, things that rot your mind. Take your imagination and just throw it away. No, don't need a TV, and if I don't have a TV, I don't need a video game, do I? Nope, and he kicked a little more dirt on. And the little voice said, "But there must be something else. I can give you anything at all. You could change your wish." And he replied thus, "Well, I thought about that too, changing my wish. But you see, there's one thing I've discovered in all these years I've been around. And that is, the more a man has, the less he appreciates what he's had in the first place. Pretty soon, you can accumulate so much stuff that you're just tripping on it, stepping over it. No room to move around. No, don't need anything else, because see, I got good health, a lot of good friends, and good imagination." And he kicked a little more dirt on. And the little voice said, "But there must be something I could do to get out of this box. There must be something." And he replied thus, "Yeah, there is. Seems you've been in there for 4,000 years. You would have discovered your imagination and gotten yourself out of the box. So perhaps you'll be in there for another 4,000 years and discover that imagination and get on out yourself. As for me, I'm going in the house and read a good book. Maybe I'll invite some friends over and we'll share stories back and forth. Oh, and for those of you who come down here tonight and sit down here and listen to stories, I got something for you. Just a minute. You see this egg I'm holding here? I'm sure some of you can see it. Maybe some of you, it's a little vague, and maybe some of you can't see it at all, but it's there. Oh, goodness, it's opening. Oh, there's a butterfly in there. Excuse me a minute. Would you hold this, please? Do you ever talk to a butterfly? Yeah. Try it sometime. Sit down in your garden, the butterfly will come along, right? And just carry on a conversation. I remember I had a conversation with a butterfly. Conversation with a butterfly about my favorite philosopher, Daffy Duck. Oh, we talked for hours about philosophy and art and literature. All kinds of things like that. Here, hold your hand up. There he goes. Yeah, everybody should have a butterfly. Wonderful things.
you to listen to this butterfly, because this butterfly is going to tell you a story. And when this butterfly tells you a story, I want you to tell it to somebody else. Tell this story to your children. Tell it to your friends, your neighbors, your wife, your husband. Tell a story to someone you don't even know. Because you know something? Everyone likes a good story. I think